So this lays out the rebidding of all the homelessness and housing contracts. As in accordance with Chapter 25 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances, the Department of Human Services shall bid all contracts for housing services effective quarters 2 through 4, so not the beginning of the year, but starting in the second quarter of the year of 2015, except that all case management, housing, and homelessness services shall be bid in 2015 for the 2016 year. Housing shelter services contracts will then be evaluated in 15 for possible bidding in the future. Supervisor Stolper.
Just a question for clarification. So we're going to start doing the RFP process starting in the second quarter, but I know from experience that those take some time. And then also, if there was a change in the provider that was received something, that could be some time between moving contracts. Chuck, when we write our RFPs and when we start new contracts, do we have a notification time or a transition time from one contractor to another, or how does that work?
It varies pretty substantially. You know, one instance, say like a jail medical contract, it's one day they're on and one day they're off, but the vendor who's going to take over needs some time usually to ramp up, you know, get their staff organized and things like that sometimes. You know, in some situations, it's clearly, there really isn't as much of that, so it's hard to tell based on, you know, the range of services here, how that would work, I think.
Well, I think my overall question was, we would see to that there would be a transition in such a way that we wouldn't have a gap in services. Is the goal,
I'm sure
right?
that would be the overriding goal.
I guess can I ask that same question? In bidding the contracts, you're going to provide a continuum of service. I mean, throughout the process and then until the contract.
The current provider would be funded for the first quarter. There's actually 2 examples of this in our budget right now. One was in our original budget proposal for a new counseling service. In both cases, the current providers will be funded through the first quarter, and that should give us plenty of time to get the RFP out, go through the competition, award a contract, and get them up and running by the second quarter to start. If there's a change in the vendor, the existing vendor, of course, in both instances that are in the budget could be the continuing vendor.
And Linda, can you just lay out, there were recommendations for us to review the bidding process in the POS contract audit process. And can you just kind of speak to that and why maybe the contract's a little different here?
Well, this meets actually a number of recommendations in the Baker Tilly, and one was to focus and realign more toward mandated services and to start looking at that. And so I would say this both fits that, and then also to bid out and have more competitive processes for our services. So it fits a number of recommendations that Baker Tilly made in the audit they did.
And why were we doing this before?
Well, we have been doing this. That's actually something I take this opportunity to clear up. A lot of people have said we've never RFP'd out homeless services. You either RFP or sole source. You know what I mean? That's the option. And every 5 years, the homeless and housing services have been sole sourced and approved by PNF. This time around, and in spring is when the 5-year rotation actually comes up, so this actually meets that. We would have been RFPing some of these out because we believe there is more competition now in the community and that more agencies have evolved, and so actually RFPing them out comes up on the 5-year rotation. So we actually have dealt with the homeless and housing services. It's just been somewhat transparent to people because it's been sole-sourced.
Supervisor Walton.
A lot of times there's a case of opening up a can of worms you don't want to open up. And the question I guess I have, Lynn, is are you confident that this bidding process will save the county money, or could it in turn cost your department a lot more money? When we look at what the market is for 2015.
That's a really good question. We agonize about that every time we open any contract for RFP. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. our interest in the one that we're talking about here, that we're talking about doing out of the routine process and doing it earlier, is actually trying to refocus that money toward the efforts of the community for single point of entry, which both HUD is requiring, and a grant that was just awarded for looking at best practices in solving homelessness in the community by 2016. So, you know, the RFP process is not only a time to open up what the current service is and to rebid it, but it's also an opportunity to refine the services that we're purchasing, to update them and look at best practice. So for example, in our 2015 budget proposal, you'll see an RFP that, if it's approved by the county board and the county exec, an RFP for putting out some existing counseling services that we are taking from some existing counseling, fit and safe programs, and putting them out for a new best practice model in counseling. So with some RFPs, it's seeing if there's competition for an existing service, but it's also an opportunity to refine and improve services.
How many vendors do you feel there are out there right now that could do the quality work that we want done in that community?
It depends what service area you're talking about. You know, it varies. When we come to P&F for sole sources, it really is because we believe it is a true sole source. In the homeless and housing area, the playing field has really changed, and the number of providers that I think are qualified to do, like, for example, housing case management and some of those other services has really expanded over the last few years as the need has expanded and the expertise and the funding for that has expanded. So, I mean, what I can tell you right now is we have 5 providers, really high quality providers of housing case management, and they're very competent, and I think they can all compete.
The Army is one of them.
Yes. Yep. Army, Porchlight, Telephone, Y, and the Action Coalition.
So then just to provide some final clarification, guidance, POS, looking at best practices, but the existing providers are also eligible to apply in this process.
Absolutely.
And services are going to continue throughout the process.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Other questions from folks? Okay. I'll move sub 1. Is there a second? Second from Supervisor Corrigan. Any motions or discussion from members of the commission? Supervisor Stubbs?
At a place to vote, and I just wanted to be recorded on one of the amendments.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure. Well, let's see if anybody wants to pull anything out or they want to discuss. Otherwise, we can vote on the whole thing. Any other motions? Okay, then which one do you want to be recorded on in particular, Supervisor Stubbs?
PNF 14. Okay. PNF 14, I wanted to be recorded that I've received a number of emails and phone calls, and I have a number of constituents in South Madison that have utilized TRC and talked about the services that have been received, and so I wanted to be recorded that I believe in the work that has been done at TRC, and so I would not be supporting this budget amendment for sole servicing, but I wanted to just make it clear that my constituents have really been in communication with me about it, and I'm not going to support this budget amendment, number 14.
Other discussion or request?
I'd like to be recorded as voting no on PNF 14.
Anybody else? All right, well then we'll move the package sub 1. All those in favor, given the exceptions, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Then sub 1 will pass and advance to the board on Monday.